So Senator McCain, whether he knows it or not, was just used as a tool of the Muslim Brotherhood's campaign to shut people up. That's Islamophobia. That's the imposition of the Islamic Law of slander. When a four-star general tells a U.S. citizen he shouldn't burn a book, even though he has a constitutional right to do so, doesn't matter that it's repugnant. And I do think it's repugnant. Okay? You want to burn a flag? You want to burn a Bible? You want to burn a Quran? Do you have the right to do it? Yes. I don't think it's something you should be doing. And if I'm standing there, there's probably going to be an interesting response. But that's not the point. It doesn't matter if you don't like it. For a four-star general to impose on a U.S. citizen in the United States that he can't do that, that is the imposition of the Islamic Law of slander.
That's correct.
You see that at the highest levels because it's offensive. Well, guess what, folks? You're going to be offended in your life, and that's too bad. That's too bad. I don't go out trying to intentionally offend people. I don't think it's right. But you're going to be offended, and if it bothers you, too bad. And let me say one more thing, and then I'll step down off my soapbox, is the truth necessarily offends people that don't have it. Too bad for them. This isn't about having a hug fest. This is about defending our nation and defending the Constitution to which myself and many of you in this room have sworn an oath to protect and defend. And many people, especially the leadership, has, and they are violating it every day. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about the Muslim Brotherhood, briefly. How many of you have heard of the Muslim Brotherhood? All right, that's a good start. How many of you would feel comfortable standing up and talking for 2 or 3 minutes about the Brotherhood? Very nice, good. So it's about 10 hands. That's very good. I've realized, I used to give a pretty lengthy history of the Brotherhood, and you watch people's eyes glaze over, and you're like, too much history. And I realized you can break it down to this one question. Why was the Muslim Brotherhood created? And if you answer that question, you know everything you need to know about the Muslim Brotherhood. That's it. That's the question you need to answer. So let's start there. What happened in the early 1920s? Well, World War I ended. After World War I and the Turkish Revolution, a guy named Mustafa Kemal, who took on the name Ataturk, father of Turks, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, created and became the first president of the nation-state of Turkey. And what did he do? Well, he dissolved the caliphate, the global Islamic state, the caliphate. Over a period of a couple of years, he did a whole bunch of stuff. What was the caliphate called? Anyone?
Turkish Empire?
The Ottoman Empire. Everybody remember that from junior high history now? Yeah. The Ottoman Empire. That was only for about 700 years, the Islamic Caliphate. 700 years. From the 1230s through the 1920s. So it was on the conscience of the Muslim community, the global Muslim community, the Ummah, for centuries, and still is today. And because it didn't exist during your lifetime, that doesn't mean it's not still on their minds. So he dissolves the caliphate. He does away with the position of sultan. He bans the growing of beard, the wearing of hijab, the call to prayer. He gets rid of Islamic law and Arabic script and replaces it with secular Western law and Latin. He builds a secular army to protect secular Turkey. How do you think that went over in the Muslim world? I always have some choice phrases that pop up from my Marine Corps days, but I'll just say it didn't go over well. Okay? Then Hassan al-Banna and a few colleagues creates the Society of Muslim Brothers, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Ikhwan. To do what?
Reestablish the caliphate.
You just answered it. To reestablish the caliphate. That's it. Under the caliphate, what is the law of the land?
Sharia.
Sharia, Islamic law. That's it. Has everybody got it? That's your history lesson. Was that 90 seconds? That's it. That's why they were created. And the vehicle to go from where they are to an entire world that has imposed upon it Islamic law is called what? What's the vehicle to get from where we are to there? It's called jihad. Thank you. And jihad is only defined in Islamic law as warfare against non-Muslims. There is not now and never has been any other definition in Islamic law of jihad. Warfare against non-Muslims. Not bang-bang shooting only. Total war. We'll get to that. So there we go. Here's what Hassan al-Banna, in case you question this, said, it is the nature of Islam to be dominate, to dominate, not to be dominated, to impose its law on all nations and extended power to the entire planet. This is about the imposition of foreign law on you and extending foreign power into all nations. And anybody who is in any position of leadership or in any way sworn oath to the Constitution must do everything they can to ensure this never, in any way, in any level, becomes any part of our system.
Amen.
Well, that was way back then. How about Muhammad Akaf, who was the previous supreme guide or international ruler of the Muslim Brotherhood, because this is a formal organization with a structure and a charter that all lays out who they are and what they're doing, in Cairo, Egypt. He said in 2005, the Muslim Brotherhood is a global movement whose members cooperate with each other throughout the world based on the same religious worldview. The spread of Islam until it rules the world. This is clear, correct? But let's get a little clearer. Here's the Muslim Brotherhood creed. Allah is our goal, the Messenger our guide, the Quran is our law, jihad is our way, and martyrdom and the way of Allah our inspiration. So in case you don't know what jihad means, they bring it clear right here. Martyrdom, dying in the fight while killing non-Muslims, is our inspiration. Well, they probably don't believe that anymore, do they? Do you think they do? Were they hiding in somebody's basement, whispering that?
No.
That's 2009. That's the Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine, also known as?
Israel.
No. Hamas. Right. That is, well, you're talking about the land. I was talking about the people, the organization. The Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine is Hamas. Let me say that again. The Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine is Hamas. The Muslim Brotherhood was the foundation for a designated terrorist organization. Are all the regional leaders of Al-Qaeda Muslim Brothers? Yes. How about Ayman Zawahiri? Is he a Muslim brother?
Zawahiri?
Yes. Weird. They are a jihadi organization. They are the root. As a good friend Eric Stakelbeck says, they're the granddaddy of the jihadi organizations, and they are. Not the fact that they are not designated a terrorist organization is outrageous.
That's right.
But I digress. Let's go back to their stuff. How about we go to their official website, and what do I have to translate this into? Oh, that's right, it's in English. Now, after the revolution began, the Muslim Brotherhood revolution began in Tunisia and Egypt, they pulled their site down and redid it. And you will not find any of this historical stuff on their website. Why? Because people started looking at it. And let's look why they were looking at it. And we got this all saved, and it's now up in other places. The bylaws of the International Muslim Brotherhood, and they go through, founded in 1928, headquarters in Cairo, Egypt. And by the way, what's this word up here?
Freedom.
Freedom. And what's the date here? February 2010, a year before the revolution kicked off. Remember this was a freedom movement in Egypt?
Yeah.
How does Islamic law define freedom? What's freedom under Islamic Sharia?
That no other religions are in conflict with Islam.
True, but he said no other religions are in conflict with Islam. It's actually clearer. It's freedom from man-made or secular law. Only Sharia can exist in an Islamic state. That's freedom. And as you'll see as we get down after lunch, when we walk through Islamic law, you will see that, in fact, when we listen and we hear these words, we have to translate English into English. But you have to translate it the way they understand it. And they understand the word freedom to mean freedom from man-made secular law. It changes it, doesn't it? Yes? Yes. See why this is important? So let's look. The first substantive article in their bylaws, the Muslim Brotherhood is an international Muslim body which seeks to establish Allah's law in the land. Fairly clear, yes? And here are the goals: to liberate the Islamic nation from the yoke of foreign rule, work on establishing the Islamic State, and do all of this in cooperation with provisions of Islamic Sharia. Is any of this unclear to you? Are you starting to see a very vanilla doctrine running through all this? Now, if you think this is boring and dry, you have to understand the enemy that we're facing, the OIC, Al-Qaeda, and all those jihadi organizations in the Muslim Brotherhood, all have the same objective. Re-establishment of a global Islamic state, the caliphate, under which Sharia is the law of the land, and it is to be imposed on the whole world. So let me say this again. All the Muslim Brotherhood entities that you're going to be introduced to here, all have the same objectives as Al-Qaeda. Egypt, Jordan, Turkey, Kuwait are all parties to the OIC who says they have the same objective as Al-Qaeda. Those are our allies. Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, same. So that means that all of our Islamic nations, all the Islamic nations, have two foreign policies. One, that they're actually pursuing, the reestablishment of the caliphate and the imposition of Islamic law, and the one they tell us about. They're lying, is what they're doing. And what I'm trying to show you here in English on their website is they're right here. Here's who we are, here's what we're doing. We're going to be so clear about it, we're going to put it into the United Nations as a formal document. And we know you're too stupid and too incompetent to actually read it and understand it. And I would argue that appears to be, they were right about that. Now, does the Muslim Brotherhood say we're going to build an army and invade America with weapons and roll ashore? No. Here's what they say. This is the means to achieve the objectives, right here. Make every effort for the establishment of educational, social, economic, and scientific institutions, and the establishment of mosques, schools, clinics, shelters, clubs, as well as the formation of committees to regulate zakat affairs and alms. And as we'll talk about later on today, probably before lunch, is under Islamic law, zakat necessarily has to support jihad. So any Islamic organization that collects zakat, which is mandatory for all Muslims, necessarily has to fund what our government calls terrorism. We'll get to that. My point of this is, they came here in the 1950s and early 60s with a plan, and they actually followed it by setting up organizations around the country at the state and local level that then grew, and grew in their influence, and grew in financial support, and grew in how they recruited people to support what they were doing. That is how 50 years ago they intended to defeat us. And I would say 50 years later, totally unopposed, they're not doing that these days. But it also says this one might be the reason they pulled this site down, is the Islamic State, the Islamic nation must be fully prepared to fight the tyrants and enemies of Allah as a prelude to establishing the Islamic State. The Muslim Brotherhood is not nonviolent. They use violence when it is appropriate and it suits them. Always as the last means of kicking it over the edge. By the time they use violence, when they use kinetic warfare